Yo, reading part 1 is necessary for understanding this part. So please read it if you have not already done so. J. Wilbur Michael Watthay in Mojo Dude said his, climate change scientist from part 1, bathtub analogy WTF. If the holes are plugged, the water will simply go out the other holes faster. As the water rises, pressure rises and makes more water flow through the still open holes. And the bathtub theory assumes that Earth can't work 3% harder to get rid of what humans are causing. KCS. All analogies are flawed by nature. You can never make an analogy fit exactly, as they are simply meant to be helpful illustrations, not blueprints. And the major difference between the bathtub analogy and global warming is that excess water can go elsewhere in the bathtub, but excess CO2 cannot. Gus Bernardo said, what's being questioned is the very assumption that climate should be stable in the first place. The planet has never been stable. Climate has never been stable. Climate changes all the time. It's a natural process. Get over it. KCS. That's very misleading. What is being warned about is not Earth's historical fluctuations and instability. Rather, they warn about fluctuations and instability that exceed acceptable historical and natural parameters. Robbie Retro said, as Earth heats up, more water vapor is put into the atmosphere, reflecting more energy away from the ground. It's self-regulating. KCS. Extra water vapor doesn't stay up there. The more water vapor in the atmosphere, the more it rains and comes back down. Europa said there are about 2,500 N2 and O2 molecules for every CO2 molecule. Strike one. KCS. The lecturer just explained that far more N2 and O2 molecules are needed just to maintain the balance in temperature. If there are 2,500 pumpkin pie molecules for every one cyanide molecule in something to eat, that doesn't make it okay. He then said N2 and O2 have higher specific heats than CO2, so it takes more energy to raise one molecule of N2 or O2 by 1 degree per unit mass than for CO2. Strike two. KCS, that's the whole point. Since it takes less energy to heat via CO2, excess CO2 will cause warming. Europa then said, if one molecule of CO2 can heat up the atmosphere made up of 2,500 molecules of N2 and O2 on average, then I want to know how this breakthrough technology works so I can heat 2,500 homes from just one home's power. That's strike three. That's what he says. Oh. KCS, the giant difference is that atmospheric CO2 contributes to warming because our sun directly strikes it while there's no sun inside your house, so that CO2 could use it to create heat. Maybe in the future, advanced solar power and panels could be invented to heat 2,500 homes with the energy of only one. But we cannot right now. So, no strikes for Charles Mann, 3 strikes for Europa, and he's out. A random kid said Earth existed for over 4 billion years. It survived a lot more than the industry that humans have had in place for only 100 years. KCS, but not anymore as pertaining to the climate change rate. Even volcanoes emit less than 1% of the CO2 that humans emit via industry. Robert Shaver and John Thain said, a real argument is excess CO2 caused by humans? And he hasn't shown that man is responsible for a significant and sufficient amount of CO2. KCS, the isotope carbon-13 is far less common in fossil fuels than what is naturally in our atmosphere. And over time, we have seen concentrations of carbon-13 in atmospheric CO2 decreasing. This indicates that more and more atmospheric CO2 is coming from petroleum and other things humans are using. Pluke B said, who says Earth doesn't open up other holes if humans close them? KCS, the only way Earth can open up other holes would be to have massive earthquakes to open up the ground. But that itself would destroy us. And It's impossible for CO2 or anything else to be expelled from Earth's domain unless it is propelled at a speed faster than 40,270 kilometers per hour or 25,020 miles per hour. That's known as escape velocity, the speed needed to overcome Earth's gravity. Busy Lizzie said, "They always leave the most important point out. What's the solution? And will the whole world bend to your will, especially countries like India and China?" KCS. An immediate short-term solution would be to cut down on CO2 emissions as much as is feasible. Longer-term solutions would be to plant trees and other vegetation to make superfluous CO2 into something useful, and to control human population growth. The eventual solution would be to build spacecraft to collect superfluous atmospheric CO2 and expel it past Earth's atmosphere and into outer space. And countries like China and India will likely come around to tackle climate change if things get bad enough to immediately threaten their existence. But even if everyone else chooses not to do the right thing, that would not justify your failing to do what you know is right. Finally, what's happening is that many people have cultural, economic, political, religious, or other prejudices that they invoke when they want to cherry-pick one scientific result or another. Some deny climate change because the company they work for is part of the problem. Some simply hate change. Many people don't care about what might happen to others in the future if they themselves would no longer be alive to be affected by it. Most people do not love truth. Some would not embrace truth even if it would save their life. And failure to love natural truth could carry over into rejecting spiritual truth, leading to spiritual death and damnation.